Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee's online worship service. I'm Reverend Jennifer Nordstrom, and I'm honored to serve as the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee's senior minister. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit. We welcome all you're bringing with you today and all your heart longs to set down. I welcome you into our worship service by inviting you to repeat our first church mission after me. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. Our opening words this morning are from the Honorable John Lewis, former U.S. House of Representatives member for Georgia's 5th Congressional District and civil rights hero, who left us when he left this earth on July 17th of 2020. Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I've done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence is the most excellent way. Now it is your turn to let freedom ring. When historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that finally peace triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. So I say to you, walk with the wind, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide. Let's go now to our beloved sanctuary to light the chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism.
I'm the Reverend Kimberly Tomchek Carlson, and it is my honor to serve as the Minister of Religious Education at the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. The story I have for you today is based on a true story about Kamala Harris and her sister Maya. It was written by her niece, Mina Harris. It's called Kamala and Maya's Big Idea. You know what should be out there? Kamala asked her sister Maya. Us, said Maya. A slide and a swing. A playground, they shouted together. Kamala and Maya had an idea. It was a very good idea. It was a very big idea, and they were going to need help. Wouldn't it be great if there were a playground in the courtyard? Maya asked their mother. That does sound nice. How can we make that happen? Kamala asked. Well, I suppose the first step would be to talk to the landlord, the person who owns the building. So Kamala wrote a letter and Maya drew a picture, and they went to the landlord to discuss their idea. The landlord thought about it for less than a second. I don't think so. No. That was not the answer they wanted. But they weren't ready to give up. That night, the sisters tried to think of ways to turn a no into a yes. They asked the other kids in the building if they wanted a playground in the courtyard. Did they? Well, of course they did. And they had ideas too. Let's have a teeter-totter and a basketball hoop and flowers. So Kamala wrote a longer letter, and they went to see the landlord together. Dear landlord, right now the courtyard of our building is empty and no one uses it. If there were swings, kids could fly high. If there was a sandbox, kids could build. If there was a slide, kids could go so far, so fast. Can you build it? please? The landlord thought about it for less than 5 seconds. A project this big, it's expensive. You don't have the money for that. We don't have the money for that. Do your parents know you're here? This was not the answer they wanted, but Kamala was not ready to give up. If we ask our parents and do it all ourselves, can we fix up the courtyard? The landlord thought about it for a whole 10 seconds. Finally, he shrugged. If you can do it yourselves, sure. That was not exactly the answer they wanted, but it was a start. All the kids spoke to their parents about their ideas for the courtyard. They hung up posters, they knocked on neighbors' doors, but they got the same answer from everyone. I'm sorry. Wow, that's a big job. Wish I could help. Which they knew meant no, no, no. But then Mr. Green stopped to talk. I work construction. Maybe I could get some scrap lumber and some sand for a sandbox. Really? Yeah. Okay, I'll try, he said. It wasn't a yes, but right now, maybe was the sweetest word they had ever heard. Maybe gave them hope. The next weekend, maybe turned into yes. All the kids helped measure and cut the boards with Mr. Green. Then they sanded and hammered and sanded some more, and then came the actual sand. They were all thanking Mr. Green when Miss Lopez stopped to talk. I worked in a garage, she says. Maybe they have an extra tire for that teeter-totter. Another maybe. In the weeks that followed, lots of I don't knows turned into maybes and then yeses. No one could do everything, but everyone could do something. Kamala and Maya wanted everyone to celebrate their new playground, so they made another big poster inviting the neighbors to a potluck party. There were hot dogs and hummus, spicy chicken and potato salad, strawberries, brownies, and lemonade. Miss Flores sent up a sprinkler for the kids to run through. Mr. Green brought the music. Kamala admired the new playground, but she noticed there was still one thing missing. No one knew how to make a slide. But Miss Flores knew where there might be one they could buy. I teach at Emerson Elementary, and they're redoing their playground. Maybe we could buy the old slide. This was a different kind of maybe. How can we afford that maybe? But now everyone was trying to find a way to turn that maybe into a yes. These brownies are delicious. Maybe we could have a bake sale. We can all bring toys and books and have a sidewalk sale. No one could do everything, but everyone could contribute something. When the slide arrived at last, Maya and Kamala had the first ride. The landlord was impressed. I want to shake your hands, girls, he said. You did a good job. You all did a good job. Kamala and Maya had an idea. It was a very good idea and a very big idea. And with a lot of help, they made it happen. Hooray for Kamala and Maya! Hooray for the Purr sisters! What's next, Kamala? Kamala, looking up, said, I wonder what the view is like from the roof. The end.
As we enter into a time of meditation, followed by silence, followed by spirit of life, I invite you to just tune into your body, wherever it is right now, and do whatever it needs right now to get comfortable. Maybe that means tuning into your breath, moving in and out of your lungs. Maybe it means feeling your feet on the floor or your sit bones, pressing into the cushion beneath you, grounding you. Maybe it means feeling the very tip top of your head, connecting you up into all that is. Whatever it is, settle in to being here and now. Spirit of life and love, Holy One of our being and our becoming, that which is sacred within, among, and beyond us. Come be with us now in these shaky and scary days following violent threat to our democracy. Ground us in all that is holy, in our own sacred bodies, in the beautiful, nourishing earth beneath us, in the rocking water that feeds us, in the relationships that keep us going. With all that strength, help us feel our feelings so that we don't get stuck in them or them in us. Help us allow the fear and also release it. Give us courage. Let us remember we are alive here and now in this historic moment, and we have the power to help shape it. Help us know the power of our own imaginations, of our own bodies, minds, and spirits, working in concert with others to make our dreams realities, to strengthen our democracy, to make our country more fair and equitable, to resist and transform violence and systems of supremacy, and to build the beloved community of peace, freedom, nourishment, and justice for all. May it be so, and amen.
Good morning. My name is Amy Wilborn, and I am grateful to be your worship associate this morning. I was looking through one of my old journals recently and found a passage that I wrote nearly 2 years ago that I had completely forgotten about. The entry was from a future visioning exercise for an online recovery group that I was part of at the time. The purpose of the exercise was to imagine myself in a favorite place, surrounded by the most important people in my life, celebrating a significant accomplishment. I was also supposed to include things that I envisioned myself doing leading up to that accomplishment. Here's part of what I wrote. I'm sitting on the beach in St. John in the Virgin Islands. I am taken in the beauty of the beach, the water, the sky. With me are my boys, my sister, my mother, my partner, and a few close friends. My hair is short and gray, and my feet are bare. We are celebrating my recent accomplishment, which is speaking in front of the congregation at my church. Leading up to this accomplishment, I will abstain from alcohol, regularly work out, worship with the church community, focus on anti-racism work, connect with coworkers and students, and be more open-hearted. Wow, I actually accomplished those things. I haven't always been known as someone who followed through very well on things that I had started or set out to do. I was newly sober when I wrote that journal entry and was actually in a pretty dark place. I was still partly holding on to the story that I'd been telling myself for most of my life, that without alcohol, life would be dull and frankly, more difficult. I'd also been telling myself that my brown hair dye made me look 10 years younger, but that was a lie too. Writing that passage required true imagination. At the time, I lacked confidence both to speak publicly and to be open-hearted. I had no idea how to get from that dark place to the vision from my journal. Having recently lost some of my closest friendships, I felt very protective of my heart, and making connections seemed like a dim possibility. I had decided the year I wrote the journal to explore my curiosity about what had been happening under the hair chemicals I had been using for over a decade and gave up dyeing it. I'd begun to feel like it was just another mask that I was wearing, a mask to hide my age. My hair has since become a symbol to me of my personal growth and allowing all the authentic parts of me to show and shine. I applied to become a worship associate the same spring that I wrote the journal, wanting to share my sobriety story. Despite having always been a nervous speaker, my conviction behind telling that one story prompted me to fill out the application. Beyond that one story, I really didn't feel like I had much to say that people would find valuable. It turns out I was wrong. I shared my first story here at First Church in the fall of 2019, and as you know, I've been telling you stories ever since. Being a worship associate has been one of the most meaningful and transformative experiences of my life. In being vulnerable and practicing open-heartedness through storytelling, I've been given back tenfold what I have put into it, in the way of confidence, connection, and finding a place where I feel truly heard and valued. It has helped me find my voice and use it, not only here, but in other areas of my life. Now, I am a little disappointed that I don't think I'll be in the Virgin Islands in spring of 2021. But just like in that scene on the beach, I will be celebrating the accomplishments that have come to fruition in the past 2 years with my family and friends. This very week, I will be doing something that Amy from that journal entry never could have predicted. I will be sharing a story live on a national stage for a USA Today virtual storytelling event on the topic, New Beginnings. Using my imagination helped me to envision and build a new life, a life that I love and don't want to escape from. That glimpse into my future that I made 2 years ago, even though I had tucked it away and forgotten about it, left an imprint on my mind and my heart, an invisible roadmap to wholeness.
When we were kids, I thought you were the sun. Like flowers we turn to you, your warmth for everyone. Now it's black every morning, it's black every night. You will still rise. You can make it. You can make it. You can make it. Just let yourself see. Just let yourself see. Well, you've got someone to love, someone who loves you back, and we're all here for so few years anyway. Still it's black every morning, it's black every night. You still rise. You can make it. You can make it. I know you can make it. Just let yourself see. Just let yourself see. Just let yourself It's black every morning, black every night. You will rise. You can make it. You can make it. I know you can make it. Just let yourself see. Just let yourself
Thank you for that music, and Heaton and Amy for that inspiring story. 30 years ago, a Black teenage girl was the valedictorian of her high school in Georgia, where high school valedictorians get invited to meet the governor. She and her self-described working poor Methodist minister parents got dressed up, grabbed their fancy invitation to the exclusive valedictorians and family-only event, and boarded a bus to the governor's mansion to meet the governor along with 180 other valedictorians from all over the state. When they arrived at the mansion, the guard in front of the gate watched them get off the bus and walk up to the event when the rest of the valedictorians were arriving in cars. He took one look at the teenager and her parents, and he said, "You don't belong here." The girl's father protested that she was one of the valedictorians, and her mother took out their invitation from her purse to show him, but the guard didn't look at the invitation. He didn't check for her name on his list of valedictorians. He just looked at them and said again, "You don't belong here." At this point, the girl's Methodist minister father told the guard in no uncertain terms that he would be spending eternity in hell if he did not look on his list and find his daughter's name. Perhaps cowed by the threat of eternal damnation, or perhaps just realizing these folks weren't going to just go away because he said so, the guard eventually looked up the girl's name, Stacey Abrams, found it, and let her inside. She was able to meet the governor with the rest of the valedictorians of 1991. 30 years later, that story became part of Stacey Abrams' election campaign in her 2018 bid to become the governor of Georgia. Sadly, Abrams didn't remember the event itself, didn't remember getting to meet the governor of Georgia when she was a teenager, didn't remember celebrating with all of the other valedictorians. She remembered the gatekeeper telling her that she did not belong there. Instead of being a story about celebrating her success, the story became part of explaining her motivation to become the governor and the power of her imagination to create a new reality. She said that her lesson from that moment of pain was that pain could not contain her and that she would always keep dreaming bigger. Abrams helped transform Georgia from a place where she was turned away at the gate of the governor's mansion to a place where she was the first Black woman in the history of the United States to be nominated by a major party to run for governor. Abrams lost that bid to become the governor of Georgia, but she did not formally concede. Her opponent in the race was Georgia's Secretary of State, Brian Kemp, who was both running in the election and simultaneously overseeing it. In her speech, acknowledging that Kemp would be certified as the victor, Abrams said that there was voter suppression that kept voters from voting in the election, including voter purges, stalled registration applications, problems with absentee ballots, and difficulties on election day at primarily non-white voting precincts. These obstacles, she said, were obstacles that disproportionately disadvantaged and sometimes disenfranchised voters of color. After that 2018 election, Stacey Abrams did some soul searching. She asked herself, how do I move forward? How do I get beyond the bitterness and the sadness and, as she said to NPR a couple years later, the lethargy and watching an inordinate amount of television as I eat ice cream? Abrams got turned away at the gate of the governor's mansion a second time. And after her period of TV and ice cream, she started dreaming bigger. The next thing Abrams did was found a voter rights organization called Fair Fight to challenge the kind of unfair fighting she saw in her bid for the Georgia governor's house. When she lost under a system that disproportionately disadvantaged Black voters, she sought to make future fights fair by changing the system that was unfair. Discrimination tried to lock her out of the House not once, but twice. So Stacey Abrams doubled down on democracy and got to work making the system more fair. This is in stark contrast to other behavior that we saw this week. Hundreds of white people, most of them men, who were angry that their candidate lost the presidential election and instead of doubling down on democracy, sought to take what they wanted by force. On Wednesday, we saw them on the news. They carried Confederate flags and Gadsden flags and American flags and called each other patriots as they scaled the walls of the United States Capitol, smashed and then climbed in its windows, and sent democratically elected members of Congress who had been certifying the US presidential election running for their lives. At the end of that terrible day, 5 people were dead as a result of the extremist violence against the United States Capitol. The sitting US president had been at their rally before they stormed the Capitol building, and he told the crowd to go to the Capitol and give Congress, quote, the kind of pride they need to take back our country. This US president lost the presidential election on November 2nd by an overwhelming majority in an election that was one of the most transparent and successful elections in United States history. We had record turnout on November 2nd with 150 million Americans voting in a free and fair process. But just as this man told us months ago that he would do if he lost, he has been trying to overturn the results every day since November 2nd. Every court battle he has brought to overturn the results has been dismissed for lack of any evidence. So now, at the 11th hour, he told these violent extremists at the rally to go to the Capitol and be strong, and they did. They scaled the walls of our Capitol and tried to take what they wanted by force. This is absolutely consistent with the aggressive rules don't matter, winner takes all tactics this man and his enablers have been using all along. More importantly, it is consistent with and a continuation of the white supremacy that bred and fed them. White supremacy gives a sense of superiority to white folks and the belief that any rules or people that don't support whiteness are wrong or bad and can be ignored or violated or harmed. In the rules of white supremacy, white people are allowed, entitled to take what they want, and anger and threats and violence are acceptable behavior. Over centuries, systems of white supremacy have helped secure power by any means and have regularly and often used violence to secure that power along with resources. White supremacy allowed these folks to organize, to make clear their intention to storm the Capitol, and to not be met by overwhelming use of force by the state. Compare the mere handful of Capitol Police who were on guard on the steps of the Capitol this past Wednesday when officials knew the rally was happening nearby, and when rally leaders had made clear what they wanted to do, and when the President of the United States literally said, "Let's go to the Capitol." Compare that with images of the steps of the Lincoln Memorial from this summer, when fatigue-clad and helmet-wearing armed National Guardsmen stood shoulder to shoulder guarding the Lincoln Memorial during the Black Lives Matter protests. Police in the United States are more than twice as likely to break up left-wing protests than right-wing protests, and they are 15% more likely to use force against those protests, according to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project's tracking of over 10,000 protests between May and November of this year. Systems of white supremacy allowed these folks the opportunity to breach the Capitol walls. For folks who are less often at the pointed end of white supremacy's tactics, what happened on Wednesday might come as a surprise. Indeed, it was unprecedented in the history of the United States. On Wednesday, there was an attempted coup at the United States Capitol. Armed and violent extremists tried to interrupt the peaceful transfer of power and change the results of our democratic presidential election. They were called there to the Capitol by the sitting US president who lost the election, called to attend the certification ceremony and to give Congress the kind of pride they need to take back our country. Speech inciting people to rebel against the US government is sedition. Attempting to overthrow the elected government is treason. In alignment with our Unitarian Universalist fifth principle that promotes the democratic process, our First Church Defend Democracy team is following the lead of the NAACP and Choose Democracy in calling for President Trump's immediate impeachment. Those who have violated the laws of this land must be held accountable within our democratic process. If you'd like to help, you can contact Kathy Rivera or Nick Hayes, or just call your senators and call for Trump's impeachment and for all who broke the law, elected office, and not to be held accountable. The good news is that the attempted coup failed. Our institutions are holding. We are holding with our commitment to democracy. And this unprecedented act of an attempted coup follows a similarly unprecedented moment of progress. In 2008, we elected as President of the United States the first African American person when we elected Barack Obama. The presidency of Donald Trump and all this ugly, racist, white violence that has followed that unprecedented achievement have been the snake of white supremacy's backlash against the progress that we are making in dismantling racism and white supremacy's hold on this country. Racism and white supremacy and the people that it empowers are losing that power. Our elected representatives include more women, more people of color, and more women of color than ever before. We're making our electoral system more democratic. Democracy has always been a work in progress, has always been a struggle for every voice to be heard. And the people who are deeply invested in and supported by supremacy systems are threatened right now because we're making progress. When they are threatened, the supremacy systems they ascribe to have taught them to try to take what they want by force. For folks who have often been on the receiving end of white supremacy's tactics, what happened last Wednesday was perhaps not particularly surprising. The truth of systems of white supremacy reveal themselves again and again, like they did this week in Kenosha, when the white police officer who shot unarmed Black man Jacob Blake in the back 7 times in front of his children was not charged with anything for his actions. But knowing the truth is something that we do in our brains. Feeling the truth is something we do in our bodies, in our hearts, and in our spirits. We might know the truth of how systems of supremacy and particularly white supremacy work and still be shocked by violence, because violence shocks the human body, it shocks the human spirit every single time it happens. It's possible to understand the whys and the wherefores and still watch the videos with absolute devastation. To witness the worst and ugliest parts of our history and our society, entitled rage, violence, mockery of our sacred ceremonies, violation of our hallowed halls, gross misconduct, treason, is shocking and harmful to the soul. Our brains might understand where it's coming from, but our bodies are still horrified. Yes, the body should be horrified by violence. The spirit should revolt. White supremacy and all supremacy systems that take what they want by force and violence are soul killers. At stake in the struggle for democracy is the spirit of this nation. It is our very souls. We are asking the question, how do we make decisions? Do we make them through violence and the use of force? Does might make right? Or do we make them through our democratic processes? Does everyone have a say in them, and are our voices weighted equally? While our democracy has never been perfect, never been equally weighted, it is becoming increasingly so. Those who benefit from the uneven distribution of power are fighting back against the increasing inequality that we are creating. And the way that they are fighting is both frightening and wrong. But we have faced frightening and wrong things before in this country and in our own lives, and we have risen to make it right. Over the course of history, courageous leaders and beautiful communities have organized to make change, and we are changing. That's why these violent extremists are acting out. We're in the process of uncovering and dismantling white supremacy and other supremacy systems, and we're redistributing power and resources more fairly. Each one of us can be part of turning more towards fairness, of strengthening our democracy and dismantling systems of supremacy. Our country needs us right now to be courageous, to be grounded, to be clear, and to be our highest selves. So once again, dear First Churcher, member and friends, I invite you into your spiritual practice. The body, your body, and the body that is the nation, that is humanity, needs you to ground the fear. Feel the feelings all the way through so they don't get stuck. Be present and witness what shows up in your body and spirit. Present and witness to what is happening around you. Lean in now to whatever practice is strongest for you. That could be walking, or could be meditating. It could be sacred reading practice. Lean in to your practice right now. Let it nourish you and ground you in the now. When you are grounded, when you've processed your feelings and gotten past the TV and ice cream stage of grief, which is legitimate, imagine what could be and see your role in it. This moment is hard, but it's not forever. And you have more power than you know. Tap into that power. Envision a future in which you are flourishing in your own life, and so is your community and the city and the world. Imagine a future in which your flourishing feeds the flourishing of others. When Stacey Abrams lost the race for the Georgia governorship, she took her loss and made the system more fair for Black voters and Black candidates. That organization she founded, Fair Fight, registered more than 800,000 new voters in Georgia since 2018, 45% of whom are under the age of 30, 49% of whom are people of color. And in 2020, Biden and Harris won the state of Georgia for the first time in almost 30 years that a Democratic presidential candidate and vice presidential candidate won that state, making Kamala Harris the first Black woman, and the first woman, and the first Black person, and the first South Asian American person, and the first South Asian American woman vice president in United States history. And 4 days ago, Joe Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock won their Georgian Senate races, making Senator-elect Reverend Raphael Warnock Georgia's first ever Black senator, and Senator-elect Joe Ossoff Georgia's first ever Jewish senator. And of course, Stacey Abrams didn't do this by herself. There were loads of brilliant, dedicated organizers who worked tirelessly to create this reality. But it was Stacey Abrams who was told as a teenager that she did not belong in the governor's mansion. And it was Stacey Abrams who then started to imagine how she would. What positive, beautiful, personal, and community nourishing dreams can you imagine today? We begin the journey to creating our realities by imagining them. Stacey Abrams imagined becoming the governor of Georgia, and she flipped the United States Senate. Kamala Harris and her niece Maya imagined their courtyard as a playground, and they built a place for children to flourish. Our worship associate, Amy Wilborn, imagined herself telling her story in front of our congregation, and she ended up telling her story on a national stage. What soul and community nourishing dreams can you imagine today? Blessed be, and amen.
You have been fighting it with medicine. You have been fighting it by talking to a friend. You have been fighting it by not fighting it and surrendering. Make me a ruby, hold me up to the sun, melt me into one. Make me a ruby, hold me up to the sun, melt me into one. Redness, and I won't be depressed now that I'm the alchemist. I'm the alchemist. I'm the alchemist. I'm the alchemist. I have been fighting it too with caffeine. I have been fighting it too with my lover's hands all over me. I look to my eccentricities to deliver me. Make me a ruby, hold me up to the sun, melt me into one. Make me a ruby, hold me up to the sun, melt me into one. Redness, and I won't be depressed now that I'm the alchemist. I'm the alchemist. I'm the alchemist. I'm the alchemist. I'm riding in a wagon, laughing into the sunset. I'm laughing in a wagon, riding through the darkness. Now that I'm the alchemist, I'm the alchemist. 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 To the sunset. I'm the alchemist. I'm the alchemist. Through the dawn, I'm the alchemist. Make me a ruby, hold me up to the sun.
Thank you all so much for your generosity. As you know, pledges are at the core of our church's spiritual practice of generosity. We're also grateful for additional gifts that support our ministry, and we want to thank the folks out there who are appreciating this online ministry and supporting it by texting 73256 with the message "Give to you," or who are giving on our website. Your gifts help us continue to provide this ministry. We also share the plate with an organization every month. Peace Action of Wisconsin is our January Share the Plate recipient. Peace Action Wisconsin is a peace and justice organization which works to abolish the threats of war and nuclear weapons. They're committed to nonviolence as a way of life for a world where human needs are met and the environment preserves. To make a donation to Peace Action of Wisconsin, please visit their website at peaceactionwi.org. You can see all these options on your screen right now, and they'll live on in the YouTube comment sections of this video after our worship is over. So thank you so much for giving right now or for coming back later to give. Your support keeps us and our community partners going. Our closing words this morning are excerpted from the closing stanza of Adrienne Marie Brown's beautiful January 7th poem/directive, "What is Unveiled? The Founding Wound." The founder's wound is the myth of supremacy. This is not the first wound or the last. We are a species before we are a nation, and after, warriors, organizers, storytellers, dreamers. All of us are healers. The healing path is humility, laughter, truth, awareness, and choice. We are our only relevant hope. We are our only possible medicine. A body is always a body, wounded, festering, healing, healed. We choose each day what body we will shape with the miraculous material we're gifted. Let us, finally, attend to the wound. Let us, finally, name the violence. Let us, finally, break the cycle of supremacy. Let us, finally, choose ourselves whole. Let us, finally, love ourselves whole. May it be so, and amen.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going. We know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Whoa, yeah, yeah.